Hey guys, so this will be the first part of my walkthrough of History Channel Battle for the Pacific. This is the Xbox 360 PS3 version, which is an entirely different game from the Wii PS2 version. I'm going to be giving commentary and tips throughout the walkthrough. I will be playing this entire walkthrough on the hard difficulty, which to be honest isn't even really that hard. Overall, this is a pretty easy game. I like switching the M1 Garand for the Japanese Type 100. It's automatic and you get 30 shots. Like most other World War II games, you can't reload the M1 Garand, which can be pretty annoying sometimes. Also, keeping the Type 100 in slot 1 is a good idea, because it allows you to switch very quickly to your Thompson submachine gun if you run out of ammo. Switching weapons is much faster than reloading. Be mindful of the enemies on this hill. You can also simply just run by this area without shooting at the enemies, but where's the fun in that? I am playing a little bit more aggressively in this walkthrough because it's more exciting. To minimize your chances of dying though, I do recommend playing slightly more conservative than I am playing here. One thing you may not have realized, there's actually a trench gun right around the corner here if you walk past this soldier. I don't pick it up though, simply because I don't think the trench gun is a very good weapon. It's just not as powerful as it should be. There's actually a trench gun in all 3 trench missions in this game.
The Japanese are inbound. Follow me.
Here's a good example of switching to my second weapon to take out these enemies faster compared to then if I reloaded. You can actually switch directly from your secondary weapon to your primary weapon in the PC version, but you can't do this in the console version.
They're here.
You can take out a lot of enemies before they even come down into the trenches. This is useful because they usually don't attack you until they come down. Always be sure to reload after skirmishes. So for this part of the level, you'll have to kill a certain number of enemies with this machine gun. It can actually be annoyingly hard to get hold of this weapon sometimes. You have to be lined up and pointed at a very specific spot. Your aiming reticle expands as you shoot more, but this can actually be sometimes an advantage because it increases the area where you can hit enemies with your bullets. Throwing a grenade can also be useful in this area if you see a bunch of enemies nearby before you get on the machine gun. Overall though, this is a pretty fun part of the level. If you are about to die and your screen gets really red, you can simply get off the weapon and retreat to heal back up, as you heal pretty quickly in this game. You need to kill a certain number of enemies before moving on to the next part of the mission. Once you see your mission objectives pop up, that means you can move on to the next part of the mission. Throwing a grenade here. Use your grenades wisely as they are limited for each mission. You can't replenish them until the end of the mission. Feels so satisfying to take out 5 enemies with one clip. I could tell there was an enemy at that location as all my squad mates had their guns pointed that way. Your squad mates can be a good indicator of where enemies are. Your AI teammates are actually pretty useful. You can just retreat often and let your AI teammates clear all the enemies. After all, your AI teammates are invincible. It does remove a lot of challenge from this game, which is unfortunate because, to be honest, this game isn't very challenging in the first place. Another thing that sucks about this game is the huge lack of variety in mission structure and objectives. As you can see, a lot of this level looks pretty bland with the repetitive trenches, and what's even crazier is that a couple of other levels later in the game, specifically the first Lacey Adler mission and the first Iwo Jima mission, pretty much look like copy and pasted versions of this one. Here you have to get back on the machine gun again. One interesting note to keep in mind, the reload animation is actually shorter if you still have ammo in your clip. Notice how you reach over to the other side of the gun when the clip is empty. This doesn't happen if you still have ammo in your clip. For this part of the mission, you'll have to shoot down enemy planes. All planes that can be taken down are visible from this vantage point right here. Aim for their engines, propellers, and the body of the plane. Try to aim where you think the plane will turn.
Novinsky, try to shoot down the Zeros as long as you can. Then head for the east sector. The enemy's inside the trenches. trenches are full of them.
Once you see this guy show up, that means you can move on to the next part of the mission.
Coming with them. Zelensky, you too. Move. They're here.
We're now coming up on the last part of the mission.
Incoming.
It's pretty obvious, but this is an excellent place to use a grenade. And that's the end of part 1 of the walkthrough. As you can see, the gameplay is very linear. That being said, I still hope you guys tune in for part 2. Until next time. I really like the detail in how you can see the Japanese character near the back of the weapon. It can actually be hard to get a hold of this weapon. You have to be lined up in a very specific spot. This is a pretty fun part of the level though. If you are about to die, try getting off the weapon and simply retreat to heal back up If you are about to die, just try getting off the weapon and simply retreat, as you heal back up pretty quickly in this game. You need to kill a certain number of enemies before moving on to the next part of the mission. Your aiming reticle expands as you shoot, which actually can be an advantage, as it increases the area that you can hit enemies with. Your aiming reticle expands as you shoot, which can actually be an advantage sometimes. This is so because it increases the area that you can hit enemies. Throwing a grenade can also be useful in this area if you see a bunch of enemies nearby before you get on the machine gun. Throwing a grenade can also be useful in this area if you see a bunch of enemies nearby before you get on the machine gun. Throwing a grenade can be useful in this area if you see a bunch of enemies nearby before you get on the machine gun. Throwing a grenade can also be useful in this area if you see a bunch of enemies nearby before you get on the machine gun. Once you see your mission objectives pop up, that means you can move on to the next part of the mission. To be honest, this really isn't a great game. It's more of a budget title, but I do love history and that's why I'm playing.